After being ignored. Because of my child prodigy sister, I finally got my revenge. Discriminated against all my life because of my golden child sister. The discrimination I endured was a constant shadow, passed by the favoritism my sister received. She even attempted to walk down the aisle at my wedding, an act that felt like the ultimate insult. But that day marked a turning point. I had my chance to confront the unfairness that had plagued me for so long. From a young age, it was glaringly obvious that my parents favored my sister. Their preference was far from subtle. Whenever she accused me of any wrongdoing, they took her word as gospel and punished me accordingly. On the rare occasion when I presented undeniable evidence against her, they still found a way to mitigate her punishment while simultaneously scolding me. My birthday cake were always made in her favorite flavor, despite my clear dislike for it. My parents pretended not to notice my preferences. She was showered with more gifts and had a say in our family outings, even when they were supposedly for my benefit. Growing up, my sister was pampered and spoiled. She saw me as little more than a punching bag. Initially, she mostly ignored me, but things took a turn for the worse during our teenage years. Her social life deteriorated, and she found herself friendless. Whether her friends moved away or abandoned her because of her behavior, I could never be sure, as we were never close. Our parents constantly boasted about her achievements, glossing over any problems, while they took every opportunity to highlight my shortcomings as fodder for teasing. The only hint I had that my sister was struggling socially came from our shared school environment. I noticed she was no longer surrounded by friends while I managed to remain relatively popular. She realized this. She transformed from an occasional tormentor into someone who sought to bring me down at every turn. She started accusing me and my friends at various offenses. My parents, ever ready to side with her, began restricting my social interactions under the guise of protecting me from bad influences. As per her complaints, they questioned why I wanted to leave them and why I couldn't be more like her and enjoy our family time. I was young, but they denied any difference and scolded me for being spoiled, so I stopped trying. I've considered many possibilities, but based on my observations, I think it's this. I was unplanned. They took a while to have my sisters, so she was not only wanted, but also like a miracle child after so long. However, given our small age difference, I think they didn't expect to have another child so soon or easily in Disney's deck, with protection after my sister's birth. Maybe they didn't realize my mom was pregnant until it was too late, so they were saddled within the unplanned baby while still dealing with the newborn. They're not well off, so having the extra expense likely didn't help, and they resented me. But that's just my conjecture. Regardless, I've accepted that the reason will truly matter. What they did to me was unwarranted, no matter what. Did they really think this would work? My husband and I have a theory that they never intended to do this at all. I think my sister threw a tantrum over by getting married first when she barely gets dates, and they made my husband that outlandish proposition. They didn't want to pay for my wedding and didn't think we'd accept her, that it would even look good for them to do it by suggesting it and being refused. They could look like the good guys to my sister while having an excuse not to give me dime. But then my husband accepted it, and they couldn't backtrack without risking my sister turning on them. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. What saved me from complete isolation was my extended family. Most of them lived in the same hometown, and I had a strong bond with my cousins despite some age differences. During one family gathering, they invited me to an event I can't quite recall. When I sadly explained that I wasn't allowed to go anywhere, my young self bluntly mentioned that it was because I wasn't permitted to have friends, consequence of my sister's lack of friends. This revelation reached the adults, who apparently confronted my parents about their unfair treatment. Later, I was reprimanded for lying and grounded for a month, but the incident led to a slight easing of restrictions, which made it seem worth it. My sister eventually changed schools, perhaps because the shame of our extended family knowing her social status became unbearable. She demanded a transfer, and my parents, eager to appease her, complied, even though it meant additional costs due to the farther distance. At her new school, she made friends, but her behavior towards me did not improve. She continued to use her new social circle to torment me, and the fact that I had exposed her lack of friends only fueled her resentment. Her friends would come over and bully me, which my parents dismissed as mere teasing. I avoided inviting friends to our home because of the hostile environment created by my sister, or because of her accusations of theft, which my parents invariably believed. Despite this, I managed to form close relationships with my cousins, as my parents dared not mistreat family members the same way they treated me. When I got my first boyfriend, I was reluctant to bring him home, but my parents insisted. At one point, we were separated, and he came to find me stressed to tell me that my sister was flirting with him. She showed up in provocative clothing, fluttering her eyelashes, and spoke ill of me while praising herself. My boyfriend was understandably upset and left to find me. My sister, however, concocted a different story for my parents, claiming that my boyfriend had tried to flirt with her, but that she had rebuffed his advances. Unsurprisingly, my parents chose to believe her version of events. Though my boyfriend had his flaws, I took his side without hesitation. As a teenager enduring constant unfair treatment, I was bitter, resentful, and deeply hated my sister as much as she hated me. This context is crucial for understanding the dynamics between us regarding physical appearances. It's worth noting that my family had a particular way of showing affection through food. My parents were overweight and often expressed their love by offering more food and buying treats. My sister, too, was overweight. In contrast, I remained relatively skinny, a result of often being punished by having my treats taken away max. Obviously, weight isn't what matters. Personality is. But my sister, Evan Thon, was already rude and spoiled. Even her flirting attempts were bad because she never learned to work for any things and says she could demand and my parents would deliver. Added to that, the fact that she didn't look like some sexy model. Even my self-conscious teen self didn't believe my boyfriend would try and cheat on me with her anyway. My parents prohibited me from dating such a horrible boy. I did try to keep going in secret, but it was hard and their relationship ended. I did get another boyfriend, Boot again. My sister accused him of flirting with her when he refused her advances. Again. My parents believed her. Tried pointing out how this happened again, but they decided that I was incapable of making good choices and kept picking bad boyfriends. Their relationship couldn't end the Romeo-Juliet situation and fizzled out again. I would eventually get called in high school as I was fine with making out with boys, and such refuse to have relationships. Thankfully, it never got back to my sister or parents. My sister did bring one boyfriend home edgering, all this time. He was paraded with pride, and my parents spent every second telling me how good he was, and why I couldn't be like my sister, and find myself someone like that, until he stopped showing up, and suddenly he was an even idiot. Tricked my sister well, and the unequal treatment continued. At this time, she had more spending money, and her curfews were much better than mine. She was free to go anywhere at any time, while I couldn't. If I pointed it out, my parents would say it's because she's older. But when I reached that age, it still didn't have the same treatment she had, and when I pointed it out, they denied they ever said that or claimed it's because I couldn't be trusted like she was. Using my sister's accusations against my boyfriend and friends as proof of my bad judgment. Time goes by and it's time for my sister to graduate. She was accepted into a college note, every well-regarded one, and she had no scholarship or anything. Again, because only her achievements were told to me, I don't know which colleges she then tried for, so I can't say how badly she was rejected. I do know her grades were bad in school though, because whoa and never shagata, we would celebrate. I would duly get good grades, but my parents refused to celebrate, claiming since I always got what was there to celebrate. My parents naturally made a lot of fanfare and told her they'd pay for everything. I was relieved she'd be going away. Not that it made my life any easier. She'd always come home every other weekend, and somehow stuff kept missing from my room, or some other issues she'd think of to make my life miserable. My curfews were still strict. Eventually, my mom came to talk to me about my impending graduation. I'm only a year younger than my sister. She told me that since they were paying for my sister's college, they had no money to pay for me in, so it would be better for me to start working immediately after graduation and wait until my sister finished university to see if they could afford something for me. Oh, and if I decided to stay a phone, I'd have to pay for all my stuff, part of the bills and rent. I pointed out that I could get student loans. Mom said yes, except no, because they were so caring towards me and I had such bad judgment that they would decide if a college was worth my getting into debt or not. I'm not sure how they'd stop me from getting loans, but I didn't ask. Scholarships weren't mentioned. They had no idea what my grades were anymore and never believed in my capabilities anyway. I didn't bat an eyelid. I simply said, "Okay, me, mom clear." I really didn't expect that and kept crying. Maybe she hoped I'd throw at tantrums so they'd have an excuse to never pay for my college. But eyes nothing except that I understood their position, thanked them for caring, and that was that. My dad later tried the same, but I also refused to be emotionally. You see, after a whole lifetime of their terrible parenting, it never had any expectations towards my education. I knew they would find an excuse to not pay for me and make my life miserable, and ever believed they would eventually pay if I worked and waited for or my sister to graduate. I had been preparing for college for a long time. I could barely get my friendships were slim, so I had a lot of time to study, and study I did because I was at college as my only chance to be free. Well, the time came and I worked my butt off and got a scholarship, not anywhere like Ivy League or anything like law or medical school, but it was a good enough course in a decent college with a full scholarship. Knowing my sister would hate it and try to stop me via my parents, I put my achievement on social media at the same time. It told even forcing myself to thank them in the post. Couldn't forbid me from going, as they'd have to explain to the family why not. Initially, they were even a little proud and boasted about it, and then I guess my sister got to them. Man, they changed gears and even asked me if I was sure I wanted to go. They let slip that my sister wasn't doing well in college, and since she was smarter and had better judgment than me, I'd suffer worse. I obviously stuck to my guns. They weren't happy, but couldn't do anything. College was my savior, started being happy. I still contacted my parents and visited on holidays and such, but since they refused to pay for anything, I could excuse not going a lot due to money. During this time, I avoided introducing any man to them. Man, my sister stopped going to college. I know she didn't graduate because, again, they'd have made a fanfare about it. So he moved back home, paying no bills or rent. But it's different, my parents said, and started working at the same company as my mom. Obviously, thanks to my mom pulling strings, this was all presented to mess a point of pride. Almost there, I promised. I met my husband around this time. You know those people who say, if I were in that situation, I'd have done something. My husband is the type who actually does. I'm the type who's meek and a doormat in any situation and then can't sleep at night wishing I had done something, had thought of something. Witty to say it, see, I'm the person who can't help but cry when I'm angry. My husband is the guy who claps back immediately. He loves drama and loves towards all of it. This is the guy that if he doesn't immediately reply to a slight you better start where Ryan, because he won't forgive and forget. This is just doing something worse for revenge. He's the one who wanted meta posts there and wanted to post on a nuclear revenge board too, but decided what we did wasn't nuclear. People were baffled that I got together with him, but just because I was incapable of acting like him due to my upbringing, it didn't mean I didn't like it. I love that my husband does what I can, and it treats people well as long as they does the same to him. When we discussed marriage, we decided we didn't care much about the ceremony due to our budget, as we'd rather spee and don a dream trip to Europe for our honeymoon. Is for where to do it. Since his family was spread out and mine was still mostly concentrated in my hometown, I did too do it there. We weren't living too far off either, so we could take some long trips during the weekends to manage a stuff. Plus, there was some work flexibility stay in my hometown for a bit if needed. We sent out the engagement announcement and the save the date for a few months later. At this point, my parents naturally demanded to meet my man. I wanted to grow a spine and refuse, but was having a hard time. The distance had made mate. Maybe my parents weren't so bad, while my husband looked like I had canceled Christmas when it told him I would at least ensure they were never alone with him. C had been getting ready for this. He even bought a high-quality recorder he could hide in a pocket to record, till he was stoked thinking of all the ways she could refuse my sister's advances, insult, and then spread the recording of her attempts to my family's soothe. He went to one and, excited to meet the man, came back later. Yeah, Porik, baby, you won't believe the awful things they wanted. Babe, we can screw the mover so bad. There's so many possibilities. I was confused and wanted to hearth recording, but as smartly told me it was better totally stento him first, or else I'd misunderstand him. Well, he went there and instead of flirting, my parents and my sisters with him down. After some grumbling about not being okay with him, my judgment at straight, they proclaimed they were willing to pay for my wedding on non-condition my sister would walk down the aisle. My parents insisted that my sister would walk down the aisle at my wedding first in a wedding dress. Their excuse was that it wasn't okay for a younger sister to marry first, so it was only fair of my sister at least that the experience of tap my venue with pictures be eames taken in the dress, and she'd even have a cake later. My husband will now type his part of vengeful huzbuzz band here. Heck had no fury like a pro-revenge instant Carla nuclear revenge lurker, when his beloved Discorn that said, As much as my wife, she's my wife, now paints me this quick-witted dude. I admit my neurons all but short-circuited when those folks legit suggested that crap like some sort of great gift. Even Troy would rather take in the horse a second time. I think zealous. After my brain were booted, I did have a whole list of insults ready to spew out, but something in my soul whispered in my ear like the devil's string. These idiots along. So Asita needed to think, see how my wife, back then fiancé, would react, and then ran out of the room before I could give away my nefarious plans back to the wife. So my husband sincerely recounted how my parents wanted even my wedding to be about my sister, with a grin on his face and the recording to prove it. I was shocked the distance had softened how badly they treated me. In a thought event, they wouldn't go so far. Thankfully, my husband, insisting in the angle of revenge, helped men not go to a bad headspace. We had a blast thinking up ways to screw the mover, from ridiculously outlandish to what we thought was feasible, but then called his much more level-headed brother when we decided on a plan that involved having 2 venue addresses, giving them the wrong one, while the level-headed brothers cold at us for it. While he acknowledged he would never be able to convince us to avoid retaliation, he at least showed us that something like that would be hard to pull off. Some of our other ideas were also a trisk of G. Ting issued, so eventually settled for the most benign plan act like we agreed, but then hire security and don't let her. And obviously, if that was all, it wouldn't be pro-revenge. Thirst is mostly my husband's doing, but he once met 2 to the honors, so here goes just important to mention everything he did was previously discussed with me, and they were our mutual ideas. She went back to my parents, said he probed, and thought I wouldn't be down with it. However, he didn't see the issue, and, not wanting the family to fall apart, would be down to help them do the pointed out that title like conflict, if I was surprised with him, might not throw at Ann Truman for all the people. On the other end, marriage is a big thing, so who knew if I'd lush out. Thus, he suggested a compromise they'd help pay for stuff. This way, I would feel even more pressured to not say anything, as not only would web the public with our families there, but I'd be grateful for the help they gave, he said. My parents looked shocked, and my grown sister literally started skipping with joy like a kid's OI was accepted. Importantly, my husband also claimed that due to some bad judgment and past boyfriends, these words were all my idea, and I'm so proud of using their words against them. I was distrustful and controlling and liked to check his phone and stuff to ensure he wasn't cheating on me. As such, it was imperative that nothing of his plan was ever pudding. Writing for any discussion pertaining to my sister walking down the aisle before Mexico, he to their house to talk, and so began the months of deception where my parents and sister thought they were tricking me while my husband and I were milking them. Rather than paying for the wedding, they lay low. Of course, my parents wanted inputting everything, including some things that meant a lot to make the songs and color palette. My husband would convince them to let it. Got to keep me in line. But since Weaver really cared for the ceremony to begin with, everything else was fair game, or so they thought. There's what we did. We'd got to check the drink and menu options, and then accept the lowest or second lowest priced option. My husband would then secretly take my sister there to try it out, and then Sihan say it's a pity we don't want to abuse my parents' goodwill, so we won't get the best options. Cue me, sister, demanding my parents pay for the best. My parents would then tell me not to work hurry, and they'd pay for the most expensive option. The same was done with the photographer and flowers. My husband handed my sister a bouquet of the flowers we wanted, and then sadly expressed how I wanted some other tasteless flowers to my parents, telling me they wanted us to go with said flowers and they'd pay for it. When it came to the wedding dress, we hit a min or snag. Me parents wanted us a high-dis dress. Okay, it wasn't outright Heidi's, but it wasn't my style and wouldn't look good. Anmu had planned on saying yes and then simply not using it, but my mom sent me message about its other'd be proof. Okay, we had to go with mere fusing to text and standing my ground. My husband went over there and said he'd see what he could do me. Sister suggested ruining my desired dress so I'd be forced to wear the other one. He pretended to agree. During all this time, they kept communications outside any text. We made sure that happened by having mere poll. You told my sister when she tried messaging my husband. This solidified the uncontrolling and neurotic claims my husband was making, so they believed it and never risked anything in writing. Some people might not like the thought of their partner going around and talking badly about them to family, But I'm such a doormat at the thought of being painted as this controlling and dangerous person is extremely funny. To mean I egged him on to do it. I guess I have a warped sense of humor at hand. My sister did try to flirt with him, but he acted conflicted to really sell that he was with them. My husband would pretend to tell them things without my knowledge, but had never told them. We hired security. It was really funny. My husband and I, who had sincerely considered a courthouse wedding to focus costs on our honeymoon, ended up paving this extravagant, expensive wedding and barely spent to them. We called it back to pay for emotional damages from my parents. I think my husband, okay, he just confirmed I'm right, was enjoying the whole trick more than planning our wedding. I didn't think it was possible to witness a guy beaming at the thought of wasting his whole Saturday doing a cart trip to discuss wedding details with his in-laws, but here where. Soon the day came. The plan my parents, sister, and husband had come up with was to wait until everyone was seated. Since the bride aways comes out late, they'd have my sister arrive at that precise time to avoid me seeing her and trying to stop at, and she'd walk down the aisle. By the time I heard what happened, it would be too late to do anything. As for my dress, we saved some of the Lee beat over fabric from my dress alterations. My husband took that to my parents' place. My sister's sister still lives, with man showed the mass proof he drew in the dress, then said he had to go back to him as I was raging and had needed to calm me down. He told them he'd see them at the wedding. We made sure to keep our real security hidden. Initially, as the guests and my parents arrived, they only saw a woman with a list of names to check. Only after my parents had settled in did Webb bring out the actual security, a guy who looked like a bodyguard. We instructed him not to let my sister in and to promise a generous tip if he kept tour instructions confidential. Soon, the moment arrived, and my parents got a text that my sister was less than 5 minutes away. So many dads aggled for the ceremony to start. My bridesmaids had been to follow his lead, so they did without checking with me. After they all took their place, my dad stood at the entrance waiting for him, and during this a Fran note in the wedding party texted me to get treaty to avoid suspicion. My husband or bridesmaids started texting this friend. My husband's Allie was a seeker to stir drama. She was and didn't mind not being a bridesmaid. As soon as my dad took his position, the bridal song began. The door so opened and I entered. My dad was shocked to see May. He tried to look behind me, but couldn't see the venue entrance from where we were, so he had no idea what had happened to my sister. Then his phone rang, he saw the caller, ID, and it was her. He left me with a mumbled, "Something came up." Gas confusion filled the room. Friend on the plan loudly asked what happened. I had and said tearfully. He told me it wasn't supposed to be me there. My husband and I had agreed that if my dad abandoned me, it should say that to make him look as bad as possible. The tears weren't just acting. I was genuinely hurt and trying not to cry. The friend then loudly asked what did he by "it shouldn't be" so that everyone could hear and spread it. Then she said, I will go and check and run off plan this so she could create chaos with the security and prevent my dad from returning to stop the ceremony. Eventually, my Momo so left. At this point, my husband's dad quickly ran over and took my arm. He'd been forewarned he might need to his desperate run to Maid Mesmile. I walked down the aisle to whispers as people discussed what had happened. Some left to check as well. When I reached my husband, always. Well, he comforted me, joking that my sad face was Soriel served an Oscar. Andre assured me he'd deal with my parents for what they did. We got married without any further issues. My parents didn't come back. He noticed a lot of people leaving and returning during the party, but Noondard, tell me what was happening. Someone whispered in my husband's ear, and he went there, turned later with a hounderous expression, but whispered to Met that he needed to go hide before he broke character and started smiling. It worked here as the summary from friend's family, the security guy, and my husband that I got. Afterwards, my sister arrived in a wedding dress. The security refused to let her, and as we had agreed, he told her she must be at the wrong venue because there was already a bride as we tipped him very well as promised. My dad tried threatening him with the police, claiming he'd never heard of him, so he couldn't be working there. These security agreed to call the police since he was shired by use and was just doing his job. My dad realized it would be too late and tried to demand that let my sister in. At this point, friend came over, started shouting and insulting my sister and asking what was going on. Basic listalling. My mom soon arrived, followed by others. By then, the wedding plan was ruined. All my parents could do now as damage control us. Everyone whole-armed about it was horrified they'd try to pull it off. People started screaming and berating them. The three naturally said it wasn't a secret and blamed my husband when he was called over. My husband put on his best confused look and denied everything. To quote him, "Gaslight deet keeper girl boss lol." He'd need ever agreeing to such ridiculous plan when they insisted he had hate demanded proof, and of course they couldn't provide any. All the text exchanges they could show were about normal wedding decision. My sister was screaming, crying, and apparently sat on the floor kicking her legs like it chilled. My dad looked like he wanted to hit my husband, but security and other people held him back naturally. They claimed they had no proof because my husband told them not to text. My husband laughed and said, "Wow, who convenient." Then he repeated, "Why would I ever agree to something some sit up here, ripped into them about being terrible parents, and said he wasn't going to let their stupid plans and lies ruin his wedding?" Then went back to Manoon believe them. The venue had cameras, but they wouldn't show me the courting as it was only for security purposes. However, some people ill-med parts of it. Watching my parents and sister get her nap part by everyone who came out to see the drama was delightful. After years of being accused of things and not being believed, seeing them get a taste of their own medicine was one of the best wedding gifts. My mother was crying. My dad kept changing from purple to white. And my sister was still on the floor crying and screaming. They kept insisting that my husband was in on it, but people kept asking why he would agree, why there was no proof pro, and why they wanted my sister to do this at my wedding. They had no good answers. Eventually, they were told to leave and had no choice but to do so. My dad apparently had to drag me sister up as she refused to leave the ground. Again. People said nothing to meal night. I guess they wanted to spare. I mean, maybe it's because I was the bride and not just a guest for once, but it did feel like everyone was making an extra effort to be as positive and excited about everything. My husband says all the expensive food drinks they were eating certainly helped. Lol, we had a blast. My husband kept up the forced angry face for only a short while before breaking out in smiles again. After that, we went to the hotel to catch some sleep before heading off on our honeymoon. Speaking of which, my parents did try to pay for our planned etiquette, but with that was risky as they could try to cancel the moresome thing, so refused. Since then, the three of them have tried to contact me. I've refused calls because my husband insisted on keeping the paper trail, a smart move because my sister eventually messaged me. I won't repeat what she said as it was very unhinged and didn't make much sense, but the important part was that she blamed me for her humiliation, called my husband a two-faced snake who fooled them for months. She wants tout Brent and hang that on our wall. Lowland hoped, but was also certain that I'd get cheated on by him. She even suggested he was cheating on me with her. My husband took my phone, screenshot the call logs, my sister's messages, and some messages for my parents, demanding I pick up the phone, and sent title to our family group chat. He also sent screenshots of messages to him where they called him names and threatened him, but they kept up. They year delusional in ever agreed to anything stick, and Event threatened to sue them for defamation and harassment. He wrote AIM, Sagan, the group chat, begging my family for help as I was now being harassed by them constantly. Have pleaded with them to stop my parents and sister from ruining our honeymoon after they failed to ruin our wedding, handed with their request that they not share our locations to prevent my parents from sending my sister over, and claiming he had somehow agreed to pretend to sleep with her in our honeymoon suite. Lol. My family assured him they'd handle it, and since then we've had peace. My husband is a bit disappointed that my sister didn't disobey, so he could call her out a gay and while tearing her a new one. We'll see if the peace lasts all in all. While I would have preferred a normal, loving family at my wedding, at least for once in my life, they not only failed to ruin something meaningful to me, but I got back at Themex's Strainfold. Do I know why they treat me like this? I've been asked this question a lot, so I assume you all will wonder the same. I've pondered this all my life and still don't know it. Tried asking when.